Welcome back to the Sports Management Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Insport Education and their new online course, The Foundation of Sport Business. With course modules delivered by sport business experts at companies like the NFL, the Football Association, and Formula E, the Foundations of Sport Business course equips you with everything you need to know to get on or accelerate your career in sport. And for you listeners, I have a great deal. With the code Sports Management Podcast 10, you will get 10% off the course price. Click the link in the description below and sign up to the course today. Now, let's kick off the episode. Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Today's guest is an author and experienced sport professional. In 2011, he co-founded Two Circles, a data-driven sports agency that won the UK Sports Agency of the Year award twice. Nowadays, he spends most of his time doing advisory work, public speaking, and book writing. His two latest books are called CEO, Playbook, and All to Play For. Welcome to the Sports Management Podcast, Matt Rogan.
Hi there, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm very well. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Got my early morning run out of the way, so slightly exhausted, but got some caffeine to fuel my brain, so hopefully I'll make some sense on this podcast.
I'm sure you will. I know that you're an active guy. Is running your sport?
Well, it predominantly is now. When I was growing up, and until quite recently, I was football and tennis, soccer and tennis, and just a function of having two kids who play a lot of sport as well means that their kickoff times and start times for matches and things take priority, and running works quite well for me to fit around those in quite a flexible way. So it works for me at the moment, but I'd like to get back to some ball sports at some point.
I see. Yeah, so this is the Sports Management Podcast, so it will be a lot of management and leadership focus, but of course we will also talk about sports in general and of course your latest book, All to Play For. But first of all, you have had an incredible career in the sports industry. If I'm correct, you started working in sports with the NBA and MTV?
Yeah, that's right. So I did languages at university. So I did German and French at university, and started off in management consultancy, so in the city, working for a strategy consultancy. So there were two partners from Bain and two from McKinsey, sort of fairly big strategy consultancies, who left and set up a business. And I joined that because I knew a lot about verbs and past participles and German 20th century literature, but nothing about business. So strategy consultancy taught me so much about business and how to structure an argument and structure the hypothesis and solve problems. And really, I took that experience and firstly took that to the MBA. I was running the marketing and some of the licensing commercial business for parts of Europe out of London, and then moved to MTV, so slightly out of the sport industry, but still in entertainment, and ran the European sponsorship business for 4 years there. So rights holder focus, there are a lot of similarities between the MBA and MTV, although when I was at MTV was the moment that iTunes launched and music industry changed beyond all measure. And so I learned a lot from that about an industry that's changing fast.
Which is also the case in sports, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then in 2011, you co-founded Two Circles, as I mentioned in the introduction. Why did you come to this decision, and why did you want to become an entrepreneur?
I don't know. And actually, I'm not sure I think about myself necessarily as an entrepreneur, although have spent, as you mentioned, the last 10 years doing something fairly entrepreneurial. So I guess it was a blend of two things. It was a blend of, in that period after MTV and before Two Circles, I'd worked for an Olympic gold medalist, a guy called Adrian Morehouse, a swimmer, who, if you're in Britain, you'll hear commentate on the swimming at the Olympics in Tokyo. And the business was about leadership and coaching and resilience. And I ran the business, and Adrian and his team delivered a fantastic service to corporates to help people get more skillful in their job, learning the lessons from sport. And Adrian was a fantastic leader. So he won the Sunday Times Best Leader of the Year twice while I was at Lane 4, which was the name of the business. And I think you can't work for somebody that's extraordinarily good at their job without thinking, I wonder if I could do that job too. And so there was definitely a part of me that thought, I'd love to run a business one day. I'm never going to run Lane 4. And so I was looking for a chance to run something. And I also saw, really on the back of my experience at MTV, that had seen the music industry change very quickly. I also saw a lot of the changes going on in the sports industry, although I wasn't working at it in the time, and thought, well, it would be terrific to be able to do something in that space that took advantage of my knowledge of strategy consultancy and business back into the industry I'm really passionate about. And working with a friend of mine, a guy called Gareth Balsh, who ended up co-founding the business with me, and my wife, Claire, who was our third co-founder, we sort of hatched an idea for a very different type of sports agency. And so I guess what happened was I always had a desire to run something, and we had what we thought was a great idea. And so I put those two things together, and that became Two Circles. Was I being entrepreneurial? I guess maybe a bit. I'm probably more just being pragmatic and saying, well, if I can't run Lane 4 and I can run this, let's give it a go. And I was definitely more of the more experienced, maybe slightly more cautious business leader through the Two Circles period, as opposed to being the sort of gung-ho, energetic entrepreneur, which I think Gareth would probably say was slightly more his bag.
You have said that the company, quote, grow from your kitchen table to 200 people, end quote. Isn't that basically the start of every successful company? You start in your garage or at your kitchen, and then it grows into something successful.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think there's sort of two routes, I suppose, that in particular in sport, agencies and technology companies and things can take. So one route is, I guess, that you bootstrap a company, so you keep it really small and lean, and then at some point very early on, you might take venture capital funding or sort of high net worth funding, seed capital, to try and speed your business up to 100, 200 people. And that's, has a lot of benefits because you can get there very quickly, but also has some downsides, like you don't own all your company at the end. And we didn't take that route. So we took the route, we were very ambitious for the business, but we thought we'd sort of grow out of the profits we were making. We'd reinvest the profits we were making. We wouldn't look for the first 3, 4, 5 years for external funding as we did that. And so I guess it was the trajectory that a lot of successful businesses go on, but we took quite a cautious route to getting there, I guess, at least until our first acquirer, WPP, came round the corner about 4 years in.
The agency is a data-driven company, and we were talking to Fiona Green here on a recent episode about this data in sports. So why did you want to emphasize on the data part at Two Circles?
I think from Two Circles' perspective, we saw ourselves, and the business still sees ourselves, to great friends with the business, as commercial problem solvers. Okay, so why isn't my revenue growing like it should? Should I build a new stadium? What's the market for hospitality for my offer? Can I think differently about the way I supply digital inventory to my brands that sponsor me? Do I have a credible OTT offer from the content that I own? Those kind of questions were the questions we were solving. And in order to solve those in this new world, you need a blend of skills, right? So you need some of that strategic marketing type consultancy. That was what I learned doing. That was what I learned to do in my time in my first role. You also need some of the understanding and intelligence that first-party customer data gives you, right? So because they're such big brands, develops or drives such big digital footprints, the amount of data that exists on behalf of a customer base for a club, team, and league is massive. And so you need some of that marketing, strategic thinking. You need some of the data out, sort of problem-solving capability. And we thought as well you needed a strong digital marketing capability and things as well, to be able to test things with clients or even take those parts of the rollout projects on for clients. And so data was seen as, I guess, the point of difference in Two Circles. And a lot of people tried to copy the data bit of what we did. Fiona's known that space for a long time as well, as you know from the podcast, and was around, her business was around about the same time as Two Circles. But I think what really made us different was not necessarily just the data piece, but putting that together with being great problem solvers and really good digital marketeers too. 8-9 years, it was a lot of fun from my kitchen table. My kitchen table actually is in the Two Circles office now.
Oh.
It's there as I guess a very small Two Circles museum. It mostly has the fruit on in the meeting rooms and things, but it's still there.
A nice way to close the circle, pun intended.
Exactly. It's a nice way to do it. It's still not very clean. We had 2 young children at the time. We set the business up, so it wasn't this beautiful kitchen table. It was very, bits of felt tip pen and colouring on from the kids and things. So it's pretty eclectic and slightly falling apart, but it's nice that it still exists.
That's great. Your part in the company has changed. You explain it very well in the book that you decided to step down, and that it comes a day when you're working 15 hours per day, and you are also a father and a husband, and you have other obligations. So can you just explain that decision and how that has changed?
Yeah, I mean, what is certainly true is you can't go into putting your mortgage on the line and setting a business up, even though there were 3 of us. You can't go into something like that on half pace, right? In particular, because we were very ambitious for the business. And so it was pretty incessant in terms of the time that the 3 of us were spending. Gareth was working extremely hard, probably more hours than Claire or I. But we had the dynamic as a family, right? So I was the chief executive, Claire was the finance director, turned into the CFO. And when those 2 people are married and knew each other long before the setup of the business, were married long before the setup of the business, I should clarify, that's pretty tough, in particular when you're going through acquisitions or, large growth periods and things, because one of you, like through the 6 months before we did our deal with WPP, 7 days a week, one of us was working and the other 2 were kind of juggling, taking kids around to birthday parties and sports fixtures and things. And after a while, that just gets just too much, really, for anyone to lead a happy life outside of work. And so I stepped down to do the executive chair role, which I really enjoyed, which was a blend of, I guess, a more deliberate blend of support and challenge to the management team that we'd hired and had grown, and were by that point extremely capable in their roles. And also by that size, when you're by that point probably 70, 80 people, part of an organization like WPP, you have more responsibility in terms of managing your external stakeholders more proactively. So be that WPP in all regions, be that our parent company, be that the bank, be that all the other people that want to lend you money to do things, whatever it might be, be that the charities you're supporting as an organization or clients and things. So it was a very different role, but just got me more in control of my own diary again, which my own sanity was important. And more importantly, for the happiness of our family as a whole was important, because Claire kept going as well. And her role certainly didn't get any quieter.
I think it's an important insight that the sport industry is not an 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 kind of job. And especially if you run your own company, then you need to really put everything into that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things I'd say to that. There's the nature of sports. It's also the nature of music and entertainment, where, of course, the reason you get into it is because it's just got this fantastic power to coalesce and glue together our society, and we're all very passionate about it. And yet, if you're in professional sport, the magic happens outside of 9 to 5, right?
Yeah.
Very little in terms of professional sport happens during the working day. And so, by definition, you're setting yourself up for a very different working world to other people. So you kind of need to go into that and realize it. But it does mean that you can manage it, but you just need to be very proactive with your downtime as well.
Of course.
So the way, making sure, so we started for me, I run every morning. I'd make sure I have some time just for me. And that gives me balance. That gives me clarity in my head. And I wrote a bunch about it in the book, in terms of what those exercise and as well as sort of competitive sport can give you. And it's particularly important from a sports perspective, I think, because, that if we're prepared to give 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to our roles, then sport will take it gladly.
This episode is sponsored by Insport Education, the online business school for sport. They offer a range of different courses, for example, Foundations of Sport Business, Private Equity in Sport, and much, much more. As a listener to this podcast, you get 10% off all of their courses using the code SportsManagementPodcast10. Click the link in the description below and sign up today. Our next sponsor is ExpressVPN. If you, like me, are tired of not being able to access different Netflix libraries in your country, or watch sports games not available in your country, then ExpressVPN is for you. All listeners of this podcast get 3 months for free when signing up for a 1-year package. Visit tryexpressvpn.com/sportsmpodcast to learn more. You can find the link in the description below. Let's talk more about the book. It's called All to Play For: How Sport Can Reboot Our Future. It talks a lot about the importance of exercise, and I think that has been even more talked about now during the pandemic.
I guess it's so the reason for writing it was that when we looked to hire people at Two Circles, we talked about looking for T-shaped people. And by T-shaped, I meant they had a real depth in one area of Two Circles capability. And that could have been strategy, that could have been technology development, that could have been sponsorship and understanding of brand behavior. So they understood something in depth. And we were looking to make them broader in the top of the T, if you like. So we wanted to teach them the whole left and right and ins and outs of the whole industry. And I guess if I think about myself, I'm T-shaped too. Okay, so I have a depth of understanding and experience, as you mentioned, in commercial sport, but I'm also have a T across the top. So I'm interested in why girls stop playing team sports at the age of 12 and 13. I'm interested in the role of exercise in keeping people out of doctor's surgeries, in particular during a pandemic period. I'm interested in if kids go for a run and first thing in the morning around the school fields, the fact that they learn more productively right the way through the day and their teachers are happier to teach them. I'm interested in the fact that in Britain, at least, our town centres are pretty open at the moment because so many shops have closed. I'm interested in how sport and exercise can play a role in kind of rebuilding towns for new generations of people who want more than pubs and who want places to thrive in through the course of their days. And so I'm interested in all those things. And it just struck me as strange that nobody really looks at those things combined for sport. And nobody says, what is the full impact that sport has in our society, can have in our future, and sort of make some predictions as to where the world might be going, because I don't think necessarily we represent ourselves particularly well, letting all those conversations fragment into their own little conversations. I was trying to raise awareness across the piece.
Yeah, I think you did a great job with that, and you show the importance. It's a lot of talk about the PE, you said, with the physical education, and you said that girls stop team sports in the early teen years. For kids to stay in sports longer, how important do you think the role of the school is?
There are a lot of different approaches to that question across Europe. And so if you look at England and Britain, traditionally PE in sports has been fundamental. In particular, in early education, there's a certain number of hours of PE that kids must do. And that's partly about developing their sporting capability, their balance, their strength, their coordination, and partly about the kind of recuperation and educational benefit for other lessons if kids are more relaxed and chilled out. There's been more and more challenges with that in Britain, predominantly because since 2008, 2009, British public budgets have been very low. So there's been less money for education, which means that sporting facilities in schools is more challenging to put on. Teachers don't have the hours of training they might have had to provide really strong sports training for kids, and matches between schools, which are expensive to provide and difficult to provide, are happening less and less. So there's a real problem at the moment in schools with the provision of PE. It's not because people think PE isn't important. There's just, frankly, a budget problem. What do? If you're the government, do you give money to maths teachers, English teachers, or PE teachers? There's no right answer or wrong answer, but that's the reality. My understanding of other countries across Europe in their provision of PE is that they do a lot less in schools often, and the sports clubs after school are a lot more active. So somewhere like the Netherlands, for example, my understanding is that most sport happens in the sports clubs after school, which school finishes a little bit earlier in the day, and most provision happens after school. And I can see an argument for the in-school or after-school approach, but what's true is it has to happen because all the data we have now just demonstrates the benefit to kids in terms of health and happiness and mental well-being, but it also demonstrates very clearly the benefits in terms of academic progress as well.
Yeah, and isn't it a risk if you have your physical activity after school that you lose a lot of kids, that you will have the people that are interested in sports anyway? But if you have physical education in school, you're also getting the kids that might not do other after-school activities.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the challenge is that a lot of our sport provision in school has been to provide a very traditional diet of sports, right? So if I'm a kid who hasn't found a way to play football or rugby or cricket or hockey or whatever it might be outside of school, I'm probably not going to get that excited about playing cricket and rugby and football and hockey in school, am I? Maybe if the school's intention is to make sure that those kids who haven't yet discovered sport have a chance to discover it, then I would suggest they should be thinking about a different list of sports and different activities to try. In our book, we talk to so many people who have found sport late in life because actually PE in school put them off, right? Because they didn't want to go for a 4-kilometer run in the rain. That wasn't, they also didn't want to play football because they felt bad because they weren't one of the strongest players and they never got picked. PE in school needs to get smarter. If that's its focus, is to find the long tail of kids who aren't playing and try to be a bit more creative with the way that it does it. For example, my son and daughter's schools now have just started offering yoga. I think that's brilliant because it's a completely different type of sport where actually those kids who play a lot of sport will really benefit from the yoga and its impact. But those kids who haven't fallen in love with football or whatever it might be have a chance to try a very different type of sport that might just work for them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can't praise the book enough. I think it's great. So if the listeners wants to get a copy and buy one, how can they do that?
So if you are outside of the UK, then the best place to go is probably Amazon. A, because of cost efficiency in all likelihood, but B, it's just easier to get it shipped around the world, especially post. Amazon don't seem to have the same Brexit problems getting things out of Britain that everyone else does. If you're in Britain, there are a lot more options. If you prefer buy something from a regular bookstore, then most local bookstores will have it in. Amazon, of course, does as well, but so does Waterstones and Blackwell's and things. So all the main bookshops in the UK will have copies.
That's great. I know that you're a big football fan also, and you attended the semifinals between Denmark and England at Wembley. And now this interview is done before the final, but it will launch afterwards. So what is your prediction for the final between England and Italy?
Yeah, I was. So as you say, I was lucky, really lucky. My best mate, managed to find us a couple of tickets. He doesn't work in the sports industry, just somehow managed to find a couple. And It was, you know what, it was being there. I remember thinking before the kickoff, like the result doesn't really matter because I'm here with one of my best friends, had a couple of beers, had a really great day watching the game. And there are just other people here and sport feels like it's back. And I realized how special those collective sporting experiences with your friends are. How's the first sporting event I've been to in probably 18 months at least. And I realized that for all our countries, there'll be some challenges around the corner with COVID, and we're not out of the woods yet, but just that chance to reconnect just the once was fabulous. And England managed to have a good result. We've had some pretty bad luck in big games in the last 3 or 4 European competitions, and we definitely got our luck back as well. We're not kidding ourselves in that regard. So fast forward to the final, I've played a lot of football in my day, and I think Italy are a fantastic side. I think the atmosphere will be unbelievably good again. I think the English will be quite sanguine, actually, no matter what happens now. I'd love to believe England will be secure enough at the back to keep another clean sheet, but I have my doubts. And I think Italy have got probably more tactical flexibility than us. So I'm going to plump for Italy in extra time. But obviously, I'd love England to win.
I see. So when this is released, then we will know the answer. Approaching the end here, is there something that I haven't mentioned that you feel is important to bring up?
The only thing I'd say is I'm lucky to talk to a lot of people in the industry at the moment about where the industry sits and how it feels, partly through the writing of All to Play For and partly through some work I do with a team at Sports Pro, just helping senior leaders in the industry get the skills they need for the future. And I think the skills that the sports industry needs now are changing very quickly on the back of not just COVID, but a kind of a maturing of the sports industry. And so broadcast rights aren't just growing forever anymore. Sponsorship is becoming a more accountable discipline, more digital discipline. And so what I'd say is whether you're at the beginning of your career, not yet in the industry or slightly longer in your career, don't worry if you feel like you don't have all the skills you need for the next 10 years in this industry, because the truth is nobody does. And I think I'd just encourage you to keep listening to podcasts like this, keep reading, however you learn, just try and find ways to keep yourself tuning into what's going on in the industry, but also try and be creative with other industries and other walks of life you can look at who are going through similar challenges. So, for example, music is a great place to look. So is theatre. So is the fashion industry. And so are airlines. Every industries that are coping with new problems when they've just had a kind of a pathway of success, because the future of our industry doesn't belong to the people that are running it today. It belongs to the people who can best equip themselves for a challenging next 10 years. And that, that's irrespective of age and experience. It's just, we're all back at ground zero now. And so, the race is on.
That's great advice. The last question that I ask everyone is, if you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who do you think that I should talk to?
That's a really good question. So there are a couple of people that spring to mind. One of the things that I think Britain in particular senior leaders in Britain feel out of their depth on at the moment is just the social change that's going on. What I mean by social change, I mean, as new generations develop, as new social norms develop, I'm a 46 actually now year old white man, right? And so if I think about things like race, if I think about things like gender, frankly, I don't have experience of handling those kind of issues in the right ways as are appropriate and are the norm for new generations coming through. So I think anyone who can help the sports industry come to terms with and understand how best to manage in that space would be a fantastic guest. For the book, we interviewed a gentleman called Sonny Pert, who is actually a lecturer at London University. is absolutely brilliant, and he's an ultra runner. And Sonny was approached by a couple of the race organisers and said, "We noticed we don't have any black runners in our races at all, and we don't really know why, and we'd like to do something about it, but we don't really know how." And on the back of that, Sonny co-founded and now chairs an organisation called Black Trail Runners, which is a charity that seeks to increase the participation of black people in trail running. And I just think he's a lovely guy and might well be a really good guest for you. But he's sort of his areas of experience and things. I think the more we can integrate that into the way we think about sport going forward, the better. The other person I throw in that we also interviewed for the book, also an academic actually, a guy called Professor now, I think, Tom Tanner. And Tom is an expert in climate change. And actually was the goalkeeper in our university football team. He played with me. But Tom has some really important thoughts as well as to how sport changes and evolves with regards to climate change. And that's the kind of stuff we've woven into the book, but it's also the kind of stuff that I just believe our industry as a whole needs to kind of raise its head up a little bit and get its head around things like this.
Matt, Rogan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
Pleasure. Thanks for doing it. It's only by people taking the bull by the horns and doing things like this podcast that our industry gets better, and we need it right now. So big thanks to you too.
Appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.